A lot about fig trees, and what kind of got my interest in that. What got me interested in fig trees is when I was studying about the fruit of the Spirit, I noticed that different fruits actually represent the fruits of the Spirit. So as I was looking at fruit, I came across a fig tree, and the fig tree represents peace. And so I thought that was very interesting. So for a little bit, I want to talk about, I'm going to look at Matthew 21, verse 18 there. I want to look at Matthew 24, verse 32 and 34, and then 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 and 4. And I'm going to do my best to try to make this all tie together and put together a nice little puzzle here. Growing up, we always had fig preserves, and there's no better jelly than fig preserves. I love fig preserves, and I love them so much that when somebody will ask me if that's my imagination, I say, no, I'm a fig newt of your imagination. That's my little saying, a fig newt of your imagination. But when we look at the parables here about the fig trees, Jesus could have used any tree that he wanted to use these parables, but he did it for a reason. Most of the time when you read about figs, it usually refers to the nation of Israel. You can look at the book of Hosea chapter 9 verse 10 and the book of Joel chapter 1 verse 7. We're not going to look at those tonight, but if you want to do some studying on your own, Israel is always referred to as a fig tree. So in Matthew chapter 21, verse 18, it says, Now in the morning as he returned into the city, he hungered, and when he saw a fig tree in the way, he came to it, and found nothing thereon, but leaves only, and said unto it, Let no fruit grow on the henceforth forever. And presently the fig tree withered away. And when the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, How soon is the fig tree withered away? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily I say unto you, if you have faith and doubt not, you shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but if you shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and thou cast it to the sea, it shall be done. In all things whatsoever you shall ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive. Real simple story. Jesus, again, we see the humanity of Jesus. He wants some figs. He's hungry. Again, Jesus, even though he is God's son, he was God in the flesh, he liked to eat just like we did. But he gets there. There's a fig tree. It's got nice, pretty leaves. Got buds. And when I was reading and studying about this, it was probably in the month of February. So there should have been plenty of figs on them to eat. He got there. There's the leaves. There's the tree. It's pretty. And there's no figs. And so what does that mean? Well, it's deception, isn't it? You see a fig tree, you expect to get figs, and you look all over it and they're not there. That's deception, isn't it? So they said, well, Jesus was mighty harsh that he would, curse it. No, it was deception. Well, if figs represent Israel, there's no figs on this tree, though, is it? But we do know that in the end times event, it's going to be what? Deception. And because of deception, we know that Jesus says that, hey, beware of deception, because that's what the Antichrist is going to do. And so I think what he's warning here, that we can look at this as there's no fig tree. There is going to be a time of deception, and because of deception, you will answer for God's wrath, and that's exactly what happened to this tree. There was deceptions, and Jesus said, you know what, you're going to be cursed forever. But it's interesting because there's not any fig trees. So therefore, he's not cursing Israel forever, because guess what? There was no fig trees on there. But there was the plant. And so the plant is the one that was God's wrath, which represents the world as a lost world there. So, when you deceive, you're going to pay. And it's basically the lesson that Jesus is teaching us here in Matthew 21 about cursing the fig tree. In Matthew 24, as Jesus is giving his examples or talking to the disciples about end-time events, again, he uses a fig tree. In Matthew 24, verse 32, he says, "Now learn a parable." And when he says learn a parable, that means Jesus says, I'm giving you some very vital information. I want you to pay attention to what's going on, what's being said, because what I'm saying is very major importance to you. All Matthew 24 and pretty much 25 and the latter part of chapter 23, Jesus is instructing the disciples about what will happen in the end of this age, the end time events. So he says, I'm going to make it real simple. I'm going to sum everything up that I've said to you in this little parable. So he says, I want you to learn it. I want you to read it. I want you to understand everything about it. So he says, I want you to learn this parable. And of the fig tree, which has its branch is yet tender, it putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even near at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Now, Jesus could have used a lot of different trees. And again, he used the fig tree. Most people try to teach that, well, he said, well, when this is going on, the tree is starting to bud. We know that summer's getting near. And so what he's telling us here is everything that he has mentioned prior to this point in time, when we start seeing all these things, is getting close. And he's saying that to an extent, but I think he's being more specific. Who is the figs? That's Israel, isn't it? That's Israel. What I'm thinking and what I believe that Jesus is teaching here, he says, because it's of all the things, he says, learn a parable. He didn't say, I'm going to tell you a parable. He said, I want you to learn this. That his branch is yet tender and putteth forth his leaf, you know the summer's nigh. I think being that Israel represents the fig trees, and fig represents what? Peace. When you look at the fig tree, Jesus says, you know what? When Israel says it's at peace, you better watch out. I think this is the point that Jesus is trying to get across to us here, because why else would he use figs? Why else would he use knowing that people were going to associate Israel with that? He's been telling, in the previous verses, he mentions that again. Verse 34, at the end of this, he goes, verse 33, the verse says, so likewise, which means what I just said, it's connected together. When you shall see these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Well, what is he saying that's near, even at the doors? I want you to learn about the fig tree. It's all about the fig trees here. And this fig tree is Israel. Then he goes on, he says, verily I say to you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Now, he's not telling that this is going to happen during the disciples' lifetime. He said, no. But when he's talking about generation, he's talking about our generation. This age that we live in right now, he said, it's going to come to pass. It's going to take place. You might say, well, preacher, that all sounds good and interesting, but I would like a little bit more proof. I'm just not sold on this. Okay. Let's look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 1 through 4. Paul is writing to the church of Thessalonians, and I think most of y'all have this down now, but just to give you a quick reminder. Remember, the church at Thessalonica, they thought they missed the rapture. They're like, man, Jesus done come and gone, and we got left behind. So Paul wrote that, and that's very important that we understand that when we read that, to keep that in our mind. So this is why he wrote them, to remind them that you not miss the rapture. Things have got to take place. But he says, of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night. thing that always has stood out before I really began to study deep into the end time events, the day of the Lord. That's singular, isn't it? Yeah. That's not the rapture. That's not the rapture. And I know this is because he compares it to Noah and Lot. And the way I understood, y'all can correct me because it's been a while since I studied about that, but when Noah got in the boat, God shut the door and God made it rain. But not till after what? Noah was shut in the ark by who? By God. Okay? So what about Lot? Well, if I remember correctly, there was angels involved. And remember, that's how we know in the book of Revelations between God's wrath and Satan's wrath, because God's wrath, he uses angels. And so the angels tell Lot, he says, I need you to hurry up because, Lot kept dilly-dallying around. He says, I need you to hurry up and get over here because I can't do what I need to do till you get to safety. Well, those angels represented the wrath of God, didn't they? So, the same day that Lot got to safety, what happened? God brought his wrath in. The same date that Noah got in the ark, what happened? God's wrath came down. So I think what that tells me is this. When we go up, God's wrath comes down. I know when you read the book of Revelation, it talks about the different bowls and the trumpets. And it looks like it's going to be, because it's several chapters, we have a tendency to think that this is going to be a long period of time. It's going to be the same day, people. You're talking about 24 hours? Probably so. We go up, God's wrath comes down the same day. Then he said it was going to be as the days of Noah, as the days of Lot, and that's what happened there. So Paul's saying, hey, you know perfectly that the day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night. Not the rapture. Because Jesus has given us all kinds of signs in Matthew 24. It says, when you start seeing this, and this, we're going to know. Are we going to know the exact date and the exact hour? No, but I think we'll know within 48 hours of it what's going to happen. I think we'll know it that close. And I think that we're going to need to know that to encourage us for the simple fact it's going to be so chaotic and so bad on this earth as a Christian that we're going to be like the guys in prison. All right, day 1, I got so many days left to go. Day 2, I got so many days. We're going to need that time to be the reassurance that he is coming back. We're going to need it. So he says, for the day of the Lord cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety. Who's they? Yeah. That, I think it's going to be Israel. Because in the Antichrist, the first victory was what? A victory of deception, wasn't it? In the Antichrist, when he comes on, going to be full of deception. And they're going to say, hey, in fact, if you read in Daniel chapter 11, one of the reasons why the Antichrist, and I've always wondered how was Israel going to be, why are they going to be sold out to receive this guy so much, is the fact is Israel's going to be involved in a war, and the Antichrist is going to bring his army and help Israel fight. They say, hey, the Messiah is here. He helped us. And it's going to make it so easy for them to say, hey, this is the man. We know that we've been studying Wednesday night about the 2 feet and the 10 toes. And I shared with some of y'all on Wednesday night, I never heard a message about the 2 feet. I heard about the 10 toes, but there's 2 feet. That right now, Israel or the European nations are trying to divide itself into an eastern and western 10 nations of each side. Interesting, isn't it? We know the Antichrist is going to come out of those. He's going to defeat some of those nations. The rest of them will finally say, hey, we don't want you to take this over. We'll just follow. Go ahead. You're the man. We'll follow you. Well, all this going on, Israel's going to be able to say, when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Seems like we read about that, didn't we? Almost says word for word in Matthew 24, didn't we? Jesus said, when what's the deliverance? When the sky is pouring out and his children come home, and we will be delivered. So it's all about the fig tree, isn't it? A fig tree of deception and a fig tree of false peace. It's interesting that Jesus could have used everything or any kind of tree they wanted to, but he used figs. He used the fig trees. He wanted us to look at the Israel. And Jesus is doing everything he can to let the disciples, and he wants us to know, look at these things. Learn the parables. Be looking at this, looking at that. I am coming back. Watch it unfold right before your eyes. And that's what we're seeing. But you got to learn it. He says, learn the fig tree. Verse 4 says, But ye brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. You know why? That God's wrath is not going to overtake us as a thief? Because we're going to be in heaven with him. We're going to be in heaven with him. So you know what? You do what you got to do, God, because we're not going to be part of it. And then we will come back with him. So, look at the fig trees. In other words, I've said all along, we need to watch Israel. Israel is God's timetable for when he comes back. And whether people like Israel or not, we're learning that Israel has a lot more enemies than what they realize, right? Even here in the United States, you know. But watch Israel. As things happen with Israel, so goes the end of this world, the end of this age. So watch Israel. All right, let's all stand. Thank you for coming out. Remember, have a Wednesday night service at 4, then the evening service at 7. Miss Angie, you want to have choir practice, or what do you want to do, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. All right, so those are in the choir. Please stay, and we'll meet after that. All right. Remember, Brother Robert, as he's be talking to some surgeon doctors tomorrow. Brother Joe, as he's going to cardiologist tomorrow, and others that have got things going on. So, Brother Robert, will you just miss us, please?
Our Father in heaven,